Episode Revenant is here, and with it comes a brand new set of ritual weapons. So today we're going to be deep diving into these new weapons and ranking them based on their capability in a PVE environment to help you know if they're worth grinding for. Since the expansion just launched, I'm going to be giving you my first impression of these weapons, which set of perks might be the best and which ones have good archetypes. Remember, any tier list is subjective to some degree. If you disagree with any of my rankings or simply just think there's another weapon that's just as good, let me know in the comment section. Let's get into it. In episode Revenant, we have some new perks, so I'm gonna go over those before we get into ranking the weapons. First up on the list, we have Lone Wolf, which gives you improved aim assist, aim down sight speed, and airborne effectiveness. This is increased even further when no allies are nearby, and this definitely feels more like a PvP perk, so I'm not too stoked for this in terms of the PvE environment. After that, we have Closing Time, which improves the range, accuracy, and handling as the magazine gets lower. Again, this also feels like another PvP perk. Then we have Jolting Feedback, and this is now going to make it so that dealing repeated damage with this weapon inflicts jolt, and while you're amplified, jolt is applied even faster, and this perk is gonna be huge. Now you can proc jolt on a target without having to get a kill and reloading. This will be fantastic for harder content where you can simply shoot at an overload champ to stun it and deal AoE damage. Next up on the list, we have Withering Gaze. Aiming this weapon for a short period of time without firing will apply Weaken to the next target that you damage. This perk on the right weapon feels like it's gonna be pretty good, giving you a way to easily proc Weaken in case you don't have something like Tether. We're also getting a new stasis perk called Rimestealer. Destroying a stasis crystal or defeating a frozen enemy with this weapon grants you 1 stack of frost armor, and I'm really looking forward to this perk with my stasis builds. Pairing this perk with a perk like Deconstruct will make it so that you can shred through crystals and frozen enemies, all while gaining damage resistance. And finally, we have Envious Arsenal, so that dealing damage with both our other weapons before pulling out this weapon refills it from reserves. So think bait and switch, but for reloading. And this could be huge for damage rotations. Now you can simply reproc your bait and switch and at the same time reload this weapon. Weapons that can roll with bait and switch would be perfect for this perk. However, outside of that, you might want to stick to a different reload perk. And this will also be good on those backup DPS weapons that you want to use with your heavy weapon that has bait and switch. Those are all the new perks for this season, so without further ado, let's get into the rankings. Hey you! Yeah, you! Are you enjoying the video? If so, remember to leave a like on the video and consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm going to be breaking out these rankings by which slot they're in. So we're going to be taking a look at the kinetic slot weapons first. And the first up on the list is Exuviae, a stasis aggressive frame hand cannon. I'm not a huge fan of the way aggressive frame hand cannons feel, though there are a few synergies that get me excited about this weapon. This weapon can roll with the new Rimestealer, where you can defeat frozen enemies or shatter crystals with this weapon to gain a stack of frost armor. Pairing this with a perk like Headstone for easy crystal creation will feel nice. The origin trait on this weapon is honestly one of the reasons I'm most excited for it. Occasionally, this weapon will spawn a dark ether orb, which you can shoot or walk into to overflow the mag. And this is huge on weapons that don't have many shots, like aggressive frame hand cannons. It does get some other great perks like stats for all or keep away for reloading, and desperate measures or explosive payload for that extra damage. So I'm gonna be giving this a B rank. It does have some pretty nice perks and synergies, but honestly, it's just not a great overall archetype for hand cannons. And the next weapon may not be the best weapon on the list, but it's definitely the one I'm most excited for, and that is the Liturgy, which is a stasis double fire GL. And this is the third double fire grenade launcher that we've gotten, and it's the first in the kinetic slot. Not only is it a unique weapon, but it can also get some fantastic rolls. In the third column, again, we have Rimestealer for easy access to frost armor, or you can take Strategist for more class ability energy, or even Envious Arsenal for reloading, which would pair perfectly for that bait and switch heavy weapon that you have. And in the fourth column, we have Desperate Measures, or One for All, which you can use for more damage. You could also bring Chill Clip for that stasis synergy, or even Chain Reaction for ad clearing. And Rimestealer will be super easy to proc when you pair it with Chill Clip. And I'm really curious if you'll be able to fully freeze a target if both grenades hit the same target. Normally with Chill Clip, when you get a direct hit, it applies 50 stacks of slow, and at 100 it would freeze a target. So I'm interested to see if both grenades will hit the same target if you get that 100 stacks of slow and in turn freeze that target. A roll with Envious Arsenal and Chill Clip would also be a perfect utility and damage rotation weapon. So I'm giving this weapon an S ranking. It's a jack of all trades, allowing you to stun champions, have free reloads in DPS rotations, or even add clear with chain reaction explosions. And moving right along, we have Red Tape, which is a stasis lightweight frame scout rifle. Let's start off by saying scouts aren't good in today's meta. However, the lightweight frame scout does have the second highest DPS for scout rifles. So if you are a scout rifle lover, this is a decent frame. There are a few perks that will synergize nicely, especially on a scout rifle. You could go straight for that stasis synergy with Rimestealer and Headstone. However, I'd recommend a roll with either Keep Away or 4 times the charm in that left column, and then explosive payload in the right. Yes, we do have a ton of scout rifles that have explosive payload, but this is only the 3rd stasis scout to have explosive payload, and it's the best frame for a stasis scout to get explosive payload. So I'm giving this weapon a C rank, since scout rifles just aren't that good right now in the current meta, though it wouldn't be a bad idea to pick up a good roll for the future in case those scout rifles do get buffed. And next up on the list, we have 2 reprised weapons from Season of the Splicer. The first one we're looking at is Ignition Code, which is a kinetic lightweight frame grenade launcher. And I'm gonna keep this one short and sweet. Mountaintop is just plain better. Ignition Code has some pretty decent perks, and if I get a god roll, then I'll keep it, but I'm definitely not chasing for one. Mountaintop is super easy to get, just go play some Onslaught, and it has some insanely strong perk combos, and it even has a better origin trait, allowing you to get back ability energy. For that reason, I'm giving this weapon a D rank. If you want a good kinetic grenade launcher, then just go get Mountaintop. The next splicer weapon we're looking at is Chroma Rush, and man, I think a lot of you are on the copium train for this weapon. Don't get me wrong, rapid fire frame auto rifles are one of the best archetypes for auto rifles, but pulse rifles straight up deal more DPS and fit that same need for mid-range engagements. It doesn't help that this weapon has some pretty shit perks. If you want a PvP auto rifle, then this might be the play. But as far as PvE goes, in the left column, the only perk we have is Subsistence, which is pretty good. And in the right column, you could go for Kinetic Tremors or Frenzy, but those are the only real decent options. I'm giving this weapon a C ranking. I would have loved to see perks like Onslaught or Desperate Measures on this weapon, but nonetheless, if you like auto rifles, this can get a pretty decent roll with Subsistence and Kinetic Tremors. And the final weapon in the kinetic slot we're taking a look at is actually coming from Iron Banner. Tinasha's Mastery is going to be the first stasis rocket-assisted sidearm, with the call sitting at number 1 and Aberrant Action sitting at number 3 on the most used weapons. I think it's safe to say that people love their rocket-assisted sidearms, and this one shouldn't be any different. Granted, they are getting hit with a nerf to reduce their reserve ammo by 25%, though I don't think this will move the needle too much. Rocket-assisted sidearms already had insanely strong ammo economy, so I think they will stay dominant. As far as this weapon goes, it can get some pretty nasty perks. In the left column, we can get Deconstruct for more damage and reloading, or even Impulse Amplifier, which not only gives you more reload speed, but also makes the rockets fly faster, making it easier to hit targets. And in that right column, you can go with Desperate Measures, Frenzy, or even One for All if you want a damage perk. But I'm looking at Chill Clip as a fun option. With the Stasis Synergy, you'll be able to consistently freeze targets, and pair that with Deconstruct, you'll not only be able to deal more damage to frozen targets and crystals, but you'll also consistently reload your weapon, making it easier to stay at that top half of the mag in order to proc Chill Clip. Plus, Chill Clip will be perfect for stunning both Overload and Unstoppable champions. Even with the nerf coming, I think this will be one of the most sought after weapons of this episode. So I'm gonna be giving this weapon an S ranking. With its strong perks, it will be a top contender for those wanting to run a stasis rocket assisted sidearm, or even to just stun champions. And moving on to the energy slot, the first weapon we're taking a look at is Sovereignty, which is a void adaptive frame sniper. This weapon had to be one of the hardest to rank. On one hand, it's complete and utter garbage. On the other hand, it's a very powerful niche tool. See, with the final shape, we got Embraced Identity, which is the same element and archetype as this weapon, just with better perks. So if you want a weapon for DPS or a weapon to take out mini bosses, just go get the Embraced Identity. On the other hand, this weapon will be getting that new perk, Withering Gaze. Now you can ADS for a short period, and the next shot will apply Weaken. This can be huge, but also a bit niche. We have a ton of ways to proc Weaken, ranging from grenades, supers, and even weapons like Divinity or Buried Bloodline. However, I can see this being very useful in a GM environment where you want to chip away at a boss or a champion from safety, allowing you to do that with weakening. So I'm gonna be giving this weapon a B rank. On a regular basis, we have other snipers that will deal more damage, though with a role with Withering Gaze, that can be a very useful option in the right situation. The next weapon on our list is the Insurmountable, which is a Void Precision Frame Sidearm. While this isn't my favorite archetype for sidearms, it's pretty decent. We currently don't have that many options for Void sidearms, and from the ones we do have, they don't really have good perk pools. With this new sidearm, we're getting perks like Demolitionist for more ability energy and reloading, which you can pair with Desperate Measures to deal some good damage. Or you could even go with a full Void synergy role that can be Repulsor Brace and Destabilizing Rounds for easy Void overshields and volatile explosions. Personally, I'll be going for a role with Repulsor Brace and Desperate Measures to easily proc Void overshields and keep the damage pretty high. So I'm gonna be giving this weapon an A rank, mainly because it purely doesn't have enough competition, and it can get a few pretty decent rolls. And the next weapon on the list is Vantage Point, an Arc Adaptive Frame Pulse Rifle. This weapon has a lot going for it. While it's not the best archetype, which is a heavy burst pulse like the Corrasion, it is the next best option. I still think Corrasion is gonna be the best in slot arc pulse rifle for quite some time. However, this new Vantage Point has one main thing going for it. It can roll with that new perk, Jolting Feedback, where you can deal repeated damage to jolt a target. Now, it does seem like Jolt will take longer to proc overall than a weapon with Volt Shot, though the big kicker is that it doesn't require a kill. That means that just shooting will proc Jolt. This is not only good for ad clearing, but also huge in hard content like Grandmasters, where you can easily stun an Overload champion over and over and over just by shooting it. I can't tell you how many times I've only brought in a Volt Shot weapon as my Overload champion stunning weapon into a Legend Lost sector and then accidentally killed all the other enemies, leaving me no way to stun that Overload champion. I am really curious if this works while the target is immune. That way you can pre-proc Jolt on an enemy like a boss right before the damage phase to get a bit more damage just by shooting a few shots with your primary weapon. I'm giving this weapon an A ranking. While Corrasion will still be better, this weapon is close to the strength and will offer you ways to proc Jolt without needing a kill. And for the last weapon in the energy slot, we have another returning Splicer weapon with Sojourner's Tail, a solar pinpoint slug shotgun. While this weapon does get some pretty good perks, pinpoint slug shotguns are more of a PvP weapon. They do have a place in unique boss CPS phases. However, this weapon's best damage perk is Precision Instrument with autoloading. While this sounds good, remember that Precision Instrument requires you to hit a crit every second, meaning that if you let it reload with autoloading, you'll have to work back up to max stacks. And since most slug shotguns only hold 6 shots, this means you'll average an increased 14.5% damage, which is less than Vorpal. The only role that I'll really be looking at is a Heal Clip Incandescent role that I can use in certain niche builds. So I'm giving this weapon a D rank, since we have better options in that energy slot for pinpoint slug shotguns for the PvE sandbox. And moving on to the heavy slot, we have the Bittersweet, which is an Arc Adaptive Frame Grenade Launcher. I'm really hopeful for this one, since I'm not 100% sure on the perks that are coming with it, since Bungie decided to put Redacted. There are a few options that Redacted perk could be. I'm thinking that the left column Redacted perk would be Envious Arsenal. It would make complete sense to have a reload perk in that third column, and since this weapon can get bait and switch in the right column, this would be the new best in slot Arc Grenade Launcher, and this would be directly competing with Edge Transit and Cataphract, which are both also adaptive frame grenade launchers. It'll already be really nice to have an arc version, but I'm thinking it might even be better. See, the new perk Envious Arsenal, you want to deal damage with your other 2 weapons to reload this weapon. That means when you need to reproc your bait and switch, you can simply shoot with your other weapons, and it'll also reload this weapon, and you won't have to worry about a reload timer like auto-loading holster or reconstruction. It'll really simplify the DPS phase, which will be good for a ton of players. The big if in this case is if it can roll with Envious Arsenal. arsenal? If so, this is an S tier weapon, no question. Otherwise, you'll just want to stick with Edge Transit for DPS phases. And the other heavy weapon we're looking at is actually dropping from Iron Banner, which is the reprised Archon's Thunder, this time as a stasis high impact frame machine gun. I'm not a huge fan of high impact frame machine guns, and they won't deal a ton of DPS, but if you're looking for a stasis machine gun that's good for ad clear, this is your weapon. The same as the last weapon, this weapon also has a redacted perk in that left column, which I'm speculating to be either Rimestealer or Envious Arsenal. Both would be good, but if you can get a roll with Rimestealer and Headstone, this thing will be an ad clearing machine that will be able to keep you alive with that extra damage resistance. There is also a really goofy roll that you can get with 4 times the charm and rewind rounds, so that you can just keep on shooting. I'm giving this weapon a B rank because we don't have a ton of good options for stasis machine guns, and I'd love to get my hands on a roll with Rimestealer and Headstone. Those are all the new weapons for the season that I currently know the perks for, though I do have a few honorable mentions to keep an eye out for in case they have some juicy perks. First up is coming from Vanguard Ops. We have the reprised Wicked Sister, this time as a strand adaptive frame grenade launcher. This will be directly competing with the current best in slot grenade launcher, which is Cataphract or Edge Transit. If this can get a roll like Envious Arsenal and Bait and Switch, then this would be an easy to get version of Cataphract, since I know a lot of PvE players don't want to play Trials in the first place. We also have a Nightfall weapon with Rake Angle, which is going to be a stasis aggressive frame glaive, and this will be the first ever glaive in the kinetic slot, so you can now live out your fantasy of running triple glaives. I would love to see this get the new Rimestealer perk, because I would love to be able to use my glaive melee to destroy crystals and then in turn gain frost armor. And we also have a gambit weapon with the reprised Bygones, which is a kinetic adaptive frame pulse rifle, and I'm a sucker for pulse rifles, so this one being an adaptive frame kinetic option, I will definitely be keeping an eye on it to see what rolls you can get. I'd love to see a roll with perks like Subsistence, Rewind Rounds, or Kinetic Tremors. And there you have it, Guardians. We've covered my rankings for the new weapons with episode Revenant. Remember, these are just my opinions, so you're allowed to disagree with them. If you found this video helpful or just enjoyed seeing a new perspective, feel free to like the video and comment down below which weapons you're most excited for. Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Lucky Mech signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.